Hello, and happy marvelous Monday, everybody. I hope that you are well. Listen, I'm super excited to join you today as I am sharing a lot of tips, having some conversations about the real truth when it comes to housing inspections. So, whether you're a landlord, whether you're a tenant, or maybe you know someone who is, this conversation today is all about the real truth or the ugly truth as pertains to housing inspections. Welcome. I'm Karissa Spann, the abundantly blessed landlord and tenant coach, tenant expert. This is what I do each week. I'm live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, sharing tips, sharing information to improve the entire rental community. Just a little disclaimer here, I am not an attorney, so the information that I share today is not legal advice. However, I am and will be sharing best tips and practices. I am sharing tips for landlords on today. I'm also sharing tips for tenants. So buckle up. If you have comments, questions, remarks, or observations, throw it in the comment section. Please don't be a stranger. I promise I won't bite. But let me know where you're tuned in from. Let me know which platform you're watching in on. Show me some love in the comment section. All right. And I promise I'm not going to hold you long, but I do want to share from this topic, this thought today, because there are a lot of landlords who are not having the best experiences when it comes to housing inspections, as well as tenants. So I hope to tackle that subject today and to answer any questions that you have. I'm going to give you also my email address if you desire to contact me. I'm usually live on Mondays between 7:30 and 8 p.m., but I recognize that sometimes many of you have questions that I'm not able to answer when I'm on the air, when I'm live and online. So I'm going to give you my email address. Please feel free to reach out to me. And thank you for those of you who have subscribed to my YouTube channel. I do reply back to comments. So if you have not already subscribed to that YouTube channel, please find me at Landlord Life. Life is spelled with a Y. Find me on YouTube and smash that subscribe button so that you'll be the first to know when I'm live and online. All right, so I'm going to get straight into it today because I have a pressing matter that I do want to share. So hopefully you had an opportunity to check out the thumbnail with the picture for today's segment. And I promise that I'm not going to share any gruesome pictures or videos on today, but I want everybody to understand the hard truth, the real truth, the ugly truth, if you will, about rental housing inspections. Is that all right? Okay, so I just want to say thank you. I acknowledge Kim, who's tuned in. Thank you so much for tuning in. I see that my students are tuned in. I am a housing educator. I teach property management, so this is something that I'm obviously passionate about. I've been in the space for a little over 2 decades, so I'm usually not surprised when information come across my desk, when I receive these calls, but I do want to share this information because I recognize that sometimes people just don't know. If you're a landlord, sometimes you may not know how to run your rental property business. If you're self-managing property, if you're new to managing property, maybe you're managing someone else's property, right? Sometimes you may not know the best practice for your rental business. And then for tenants, I recognize that sometimes maybe for those of you who are new getting into housing, maybe this is your first rental home, I get it. Here's what I do know from studying human behavior. People do things for 2 reasons, either because they don't know, or maybe perhaps they just don't care. In any event, housing inspection, it is a big deal. Okay. Let us all agree on that. And I'm going to explain why they are important in a few minutes. And so first and foremost, as a landlord, I do want you to know and understand, first and foremost, that when it comes to your rental property business, I strongly believe in this philosophy that if you treat your business like a business, it will in fact pay you like a business. But if you treat it like a hobby, then you get paid like it's a hobby. So it's important to make sure that you have policies in place, that you understand the importance of this subject matter today, because you can avoid and eliminate a lot of costly mistakes. All right. Just doing things a little bit differently. And for tenants, I don't want you to think that just because you are renting a property from someone, whether you're in a housing program or not, a landlord, a property owner, um, is not better than you, right? And I know that sometimes, based off of conversations that I've had with lots of tenants, some tenants, they feel like they're not welcome in their own home because of how the landlord talks to them or how the landlord treat them, or worse, the fact that landlord refuse to make repairs. Well, I consider them type of individuals to be slumlords. Now, there are a lot of great landlords. I'm not bashing landlords. I'm a housing provider. I get it. There are a lot of great landlords. Let me say that again, and I hope that rings out. I hope that echoes. There are a lot of great landlords and housing providers that are out here really trying to provide decent, safe, sanitary, affordable rental housing so that tenants can have a really great place to live. But unfortunately, there are some who don't care about anything other than collecting money at the beginning of the month. All right. And so, like I said, buckle up. I'm going to share some information today as it pertains to housing inspections, because I don't want to assume that everybody know what that means, what to look out for, or how to do it. All right. So I'm going to share some landlord tips first, and then I have some tips for tenants. Before I do that, let me bring up my email address for those of you who may have to log off before I finish, because I want you to be able to contact me. So at the bottom of the screen here, that is my email address. That is where you can reach me when I'm not live, when I'm not online. And again, thank you so much for joining me today. All right. I see your comments coming in. Thank you so much. Show me some love in the comment section. Say, hey, girl, hey, let me know you are here. So, hey, Tracy, thank you so much for tuning in. Good evening to you. Hello, Angel. Thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. All right, so let me get straight into it. Let me share my tips for landlords first, because I want you as a landlord to know and understand what you should do when it comes to your rental property. You should always do this. You should know that inspections are absolutely necessary. As a housing provider, it is definitely necessary to conduct inspections. Here's why. When you are conducting inspections, number one, you understand and you know the condition of your rental property. There is nothing worse than allowing someone to rent your place and you don't know what's going on. You don't know if repairs are needed. You don't know the condition of it. You don't know if there's a water leak. You don't know if there's mold. You don't know if there's infestation. And when it comes to rental property, it is an asset. You always want to preserve it. You want to maintain it, right? And it's not the tenant's responsibility. It's not solely, let me say that, the tenant's responsibility to let you know that repairs are needed. Here's why I strongly recommend housing providers to not only wait for tenants to give them notification that something is wrong. Sometimes a tenant may not remember, or maybe they just don't know to contact you because the smoke detector is chirping or beeping. And I know that might not seem like something that's major, but let me assure you this one thing, that if you are allowing your tenants to live in a rental property and there are no operable smoke detectors, there are no working smoke detectors, and a fire breaks out, that's going to be really, really bad for you as a housing provider. In many jurisdictions, there are housing inspection offices and inspectors that will come out to verify that there's a working smoke detector. So at the very least, if you're only conducting an inspection just to make sure that the smoke detectors are working properly, please do that. In situations where you are going in, you're doing the inspections, and maybe the battery is missing, one of the things that I always recommend is that when you're conducting the inspection, take some extra smoke detector batteries with you, or maybe have extra smoke detectors on standby. In many places, you can go to the fire department to buy them. I'm sorry, to get them for free, or you can just simply buy them. I strongly recommend having those batteries because, like I said, if something breaks out, a fire breaks out, worst case scenario, something happens in the home, whether it's an apartment, a house, a condo, it doesn't really matter what type of rental property it is. Please make sure those smoke detectors are in place. Okay. And if you are a tenant, I know that sometimes, yes, it can be annoying if you hear the smoke detector constantly going off when you're cooking or if it's too hot. I get it, but they're in place to alert you in the event of an emergency. And so when something happens, it needs to work, right? So landlords, please make sure the smoke detectors are working properly. Inspections are necessary because in addition to knowing the condition of the property, like I said, it preserves the property. All right. Here's the second thing as a landlord, what you should always know and understand. You should understand what to inspect. I know that sometimes as a property manager, as a property owner, you may feel uncomfortable going into a tenant's personal space. Well, here's the thing. You always want to inspect every room in that place. You want to inspect wall to wall, door to door, floor to floor. Go in every room, assess the condition, open and close those doors, right? You want to make sure that the cabinet doors are not falling off, they're not hanging on or falling off the hinge. You want to make sure that if you go into the kitchen, that the refrigerator, the gasket is not ripped or torn. You want to make sure that the stove, you open and close that oven door if there's a stove in place. You want to make sure that the water is running properly. There are no leaks. There are no drips. You want to look under the cabinet. You want to look under the sink, right? You want to check all those things. You want to make sure there are no holes in the wall. You want to make sure that any doors in that rental property, it opens and closes properly, that it locks the way that it should. If there are windows, and there should be windows that open and close, the window should have a screen, right? And these are just part of, and you should have a checklist. So when you're going out to do these rental inspections, you should have a checklist for every room that you're going into. Have that checklist ready. Identify and take notes of anything that seems out of place, any repairs that are needed, so that you'll know what needs to be done. Now, in some circumstances, tenants may be responsible for the damage. They may be responsible for deficiencies. Don't be afraid to have those conversations with the tenants to let them know what's going to happen, what's going to take place. Maybe you have to get a maintenance person to come back, or maybe you have to get a contractor to go out. But in any event, please make sure that the tenant understand what is going on and what are the next steps. So let's say, for instance, you walk into the place. There's a massive hole in the wall. Now, I get it. Sometimes tenants may not remember what happened and how the hole mysteriously appeared in the wall. I get it. You want to address it. Make sure that you are prepared to get a contractor out. If there is some sort of pest control issue, if there is infestation of maybe mice or roaches, bed bugs, ants, or spiders. Listen, infestation is defined as 2 or more. Okay. So if in that rental property you see 2 or more roaches, 2 or more bed bugs, or whatever, then that's infestation. Please make sure that you understand what to inspect. Okay. Sometimes tenants may not feel comfortable with you coming through, and sometimes they may feel like you're looking at their personal things. And just go ahead and explain to them that you're not looking at, if that's what you're not doing, but always be honest. But explain that you're not necessarily you're not looking through their personal things. You're looking for repairs that may be needed in a rental property. Because sometimes tenants, they just don't want you in because maybe they don't want you to see what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe they haven't cleaned up. Maybe they haven't had an opportunity to tidy up and they don't want you to see those things. But you are still responsible to do your part. So please understand as a landlord what to inspect. Please also know this. It is always important to respond to deficiencies timely. When you see something, say something, but also move with great urgency to make sure repairs are taken care of right away. I talked a little earlier about maybe a water leak. I promise that a water leak will never, ever fix itself. A broken pipe will not fix itself. Okay? Please make sure that if there are deficiencies, that you're following up with the tenant to let them know, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we came out, there's a bullet hole in the window. We're going to replace the window within, and give them the timeline. Give them a realistic timeline. And if you don't know the timeline, let them know, listen, we're going to repair that window. We're going to replace the window within a week or so, but I'm going to follow up and let you know when the contractor is coming out or when the window will be in stock or whatever the situation is. But please make sure that you are following up promptly. The same way that you want tenants to pay your rent promptly, I'm sure they would appreciate a landlord who is taking care of those repairs promptly. All right, so those are my 3 tips for landlords. Now, remember I said I have some tips for tenants? So hang on, don't go anywhere, tenants. I have some tips for you. What I want you to know and understand is it is so important that you prepare for inspections. What does that mean? I'm glad you asked. That means maybe clean up, straighten up, know that when an inspection is taking place, they are and they should be looking in every area of that rental property. They should be going from room to room, bathroom, kitchen, dining room, living room, basement, attic, if applicable, right? Because maybe you live in an apartment. But please know and understand that the landlord is coming in to make repairs. I have gone into so many rental properties. So in my career, I've managed over 12,000 properties in over 2 decades. And I'm always, I won't say surprised, but I'm always a little confused when tenants know that the inspection is happening in advance. I typically make sure that they have ample notice because I want people to be prepared. But to show up on the day of inspection only for them to say, oh, well, I didn't get a chance to clean up. And I get it. Life happens. Maybe you went on vacation as a tenant. Maybe you forgot that the inspection was happening. But always prepare, because you also have a role to play sometimes when it comes to maintenance. Some landlords are also looking for housekeeping. Okay. So with housekeeping, they're looking at how well you maintain your home. And if it is in your rental lease agreement that you are to maintain that home, and if there are any issues that violates the lease, some landlords and many are now starting to take tenants to court because it violates the lease. All right. So please clean up, straighten up, wipe the stove off, clean the tub, sweep the floor, right? Those things are important. So please prepare for that housing inspection. It's important that you prepare because you want your landlord to see any issues that needs to be taken care of as pertains to repairs. So let's say, for instance, the floor is dirty. The landlord can't see the floor. The landlord can't see that there's a tripping hazard. Maybe the carpet is ripped or torn. That should be taken care of right away if there's mess and trash all over the floor, right? So you want your landlord to see the repairs that they need to make. And sometimes if you don't clean up, it's impossible for them to see that, right? Maybe the landlord is in the kitchen. The stove is dirty, right? Maybe it's so filthy they don't even turn the stove on. Maybe let's say one of the elements on the stove doesn't work. Well, if the stove is so dirty they don't want to touch it, They don't know that perhaps they should just replace the stove for you. So those are just some reasons that I hope that you understand as to why it's important for you to prepare as a tenant for that inspection. Here's another thing for tenants. Please promptly report needed repairs. Give that responsibility to your landlord to make those repairs. So if something is wrong, if you see something, say something. Listen, a toilet that's running and making noise is not supposed to do that. Okay? If you hear that, contact your landlord to say, hey, I was watching Karissa and she told me that if my toilet is making some noise, I should contact you. Please do that right away. If I talked about, remember a little earlier if you were on, I talked about that smoke detector that's beeping or chirping. That's not normal. And I know that sometimes you may hear it beeping for so long, you might not even recognize that it's making noise. That's not normal. That means that it may need to be, the battery may need to be changed, or perhaps the smoke detector in and of itself could be faulty and that the landlord should replace it. Because we don't want the worst case scenario to happen where a fire breaks out and because there is no battery either in it, or the battery is about to go dead, or maybe it's just not working at all and it doesn't alert you in time, right? We don't want worst case scenario to happen. So it's definitely important to report those things. I talked about the leak. I talked about holes in the walls. Sometimes landlords may not be so hard on you if you just report these issues timely and let the landlord know what needs to be taken care of. All right, and here is one other tip I do want to share. Let me bring it on the screen. Give me 1 second because I don't have it up here, but here's what I do want you to know. As a tenant, I want you to be present for inspections. I know that sometimes you may have a busy schedule. All right, give me 1 second. I want to get this up because I want you to see it. Please be present for inspections. I know that sometimes you may have a busy schedule as a tenant. Maybe you're working, maybe you're in school, maybe you're on vacation. Maybe you just don't want to be around your landlord. I get it. But it's so important to be present as a tenant. Be present for the house inspection so that your landlord can explain to you what they see, what's going to happen, what the next steps are. And then here's another reason why it's important that you're present. Because if you have any questions, you can ask the landlord when they're there, right? Have a conversation. Well, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, I know that you said you have to come back or you're going to send a contractor or your maintenance person to take care of the repairs. But when is that going to happen? Can you give me a timeline? Will you notify me in advance? Do I have to be home? Is there anything that you need from me for these repairs to be completed? Have those conversations, but you can't do that if you're not present. Now, if it's a situation where you're not comfortable, you don't want to be there, I get it. And I have always respected tenants. I've had tenants who said they didn't want to be in the home. Now, this was during COVID, right? I have had tenants who prefer that we had protective clothing on, we had protective booties on our shoes. Some tenants prefer that we take our shoes off. I've experienced a lot, right? So I'm never surprised, but this is why I share information, because I want you as a landlord to know and understand, like I said, how to properly run your rental property business, because it is a business. And as a tenant, I want you to also know that you have rights, but you also have responsibilities. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today, because inspections are not always easy. Some housing providers, some landlords are not conducting inspections. And again, you want to make sure that you are doing this because it's preserving the asset. If the repairs are needed, go ahead and take care of those repairs promptly. Communicate with your tenant and let them know what's going on and provide a timeline for those repairs. And if there's tenant caused damage, if the tenant is there, have those conversations and then follow up in writing, right? So for many of you who are in some sort of, hey, Tanya, hey, Santia, thank you for tuning in. So if you especially have tenants who are participating in any type of housing subsidy program, such as your housing choice voucher program, formerly called Section 8, or maybe you have a tenant who is in rapid rehousing or any other housing program, right? You want to make sure that you are completing those inspections timely. You don't want to wait until the housing agency gives you notice that they're coming out. You want to do it in advance, because for those of you who have tenants in a housing program, usually if there are repairs that need to be made and that inspection failed, they'll give you time to make the repairs. But if you don't make the repairs timely, they're going to discontinue your monthly housing payments. And that's something that you definitely don't want. That's always bad for business when your money is disrupted, it is cut off, it is suspended. The payments sometimes, just depending on the agency, could be abated, meaning that you have nothing coming in from the government, right? And if that happens, you cannot take the tenant to court because the housing agency stopped paying you because you didn't make repairs. Usually a judge will not hold the tenant accountable or responsible for something that you are supposed to do. So please understand the importance of taking care of those repairs before you get a notice that a housing agency is going to come out to inspect that rental property. Okay. But here's the thing. If a housing agency is coming out, that's good, because maybe you didn't know what to look for. And I don't want people to get all alarmed because there's a housing inspection. It's not the end of the world. Listen, I'm a housing inspector. I think I'm one of the nicest and the cutest housing inspectors out here, right? I'm not mean, but when I show up, I'm making sure that any repairs that are needed, I make a list and say, hey, listen, this is what's wrong. Fix this, 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 and this. Providing a checklist, and then also explaining to the tenant what needs to happen. If they need to clean up, I'll educate them. So for instance, I had a young lady. She complained that there was mold in her bathroom. She had, in her tub, she had tile on the wall. And yes, it was true that there were black spots in the cracks and the crevices of the tile and the base of the tub, right? And so I showed the young lady, well, I asked her, I said, and I wasn't prepared to do it that day. Okay. I was not prepared, but I did it anyway. Here's what I did. In my nice, cute little pantsuit that I had on, because that was not a day that I was scheduled to do an inspection, but a complaint came in. I visited the property to make sure that I addressed the tenant's concern because she escalated her problem and I was a problem solver, so I had to go there. Okay. So my cute little pantsuit, I asked her what cleaning solution she used to clean the tub. So she told me what she used. I asked her if she could go and get it. And I asked her, so when you clean the tub, are you using a rag? Like, what do you use to clean the tub? She said, well, I have a rag that I use. So I rolled up my pants. I'm sorry, my sleeves. I got down on my knees. True story, got down on my knees. And I showed her how to clean the tub. Why was that important? Because sometimes people really just don't know. She didn't know that the black spots were just dirt, built up soap scum, dirt that had never been cleaned. And so as I'm cleaning her tub, I'm scrubbing her tub in a circle, not the whole tub, but just an area with my knuckles, showing her how to clean it. Listen, I am not saying that as a landlord, that's what you should do. I'm just telling you that I'm passionate about educating people so that they'll know how to do it for themselves, right? Because you can give people fish or you can teach them how to fish, right? So it's not just enough for me to tell people how to do it. Sometimes you have to show them how to do it. And I wasn't so high up that I couldn't show this young lady how to clean her tub. And then after I did that, I showed her that what she had does in fact work. It was sufficient enough to clean her tub. She thanked me a million times over. She cried. And then when I got up, I explained to her how important it was for her to show her kids how to do the same thing, because that's how I raised my kids. Listen, let me tell you, when my kids were little, honey, on a Saturday, I would have my kids washing walls, wiping down the outlet cover, wiping the refrigerator, sweeping, mopping, because I wanted them to understand how important it is and how good it feels to have a clean home. And so I'm proud to say that my kids are teaching their kids the same thing, right? But again, people do things for two reasons, either because they don't know or because they don't care. And I know that some people say, well, it's just common sense, just wipe the stove. Well, yeah, you should. Sometimes it doesn't happen because maybe they're busy. Maybe some of these tenants, they have children, they're moving on to the next thing. Maybe after dinner, they're going over homework, right? They're busy. And maybe they meant to wipe the stove down, they just didn't do it. And a week or two has gone by, and now you have this grease buildup because nobody wiped the stove down. And so in a situation like that, I shared with this young lady how to use a lemon scented dish detergent. Put it on that grease on the stove and let it sit just for a few minutes, because the lemon in that dish detergent will usually act as a degreaser and make it easy to clean it off. And so those are just some of the tips that I give tenants. So when I see something, I say something. As a housing inspector, I promise that when I leave, it's usually all smiles, right? Why am I sharing this? Because housing inspections are important. They are in place. They are so needed because at the end of the day, that rental property has to be maintained. And if no inspections are happening, well, repairs are not being completed. And the repairs are not, like I said, it's not going to take care of itself on its own. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation today. I shared quite a bit. I shared tips for landlords. The first tip that I shared was what you should know. Inspections are necessary. Also, understand what to inspect. Third, and as importantly, respond to deficiencies timely. For tenants, these are the tips I shared for tenants. Know and understand that you should always prepare for inspections. Inspections are not harmful. They are not there to hurt you. Please allow your landlords in to make those inspections to conduct necessary repairs as needed. The next tip I shared is promptly report any repairs to your landlord, okay? Not next week, not next month, not next year, but right away, okay? And then also, the third tip for tenants is please be present. Know that if that landlord, the property manager, the housing inspector, if they're coming, you should always be present. All right. I hope that this information was helpful today. I wanted to share because if you look at the picture for this specific segment, you'll see just a glimpse of what it's like when inspections are not happening. My time is up, and I absolutely thank you for yours. Please make sure that you join me each and every Monday right here. I'm live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I value you. If this was helpful today, please share it with somebody else. And please make sure that you join me next week right here at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As a matter of fact, let me share my email address one more time. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. This is where you can find me. Again, I'm Karissa Spann, the abundantly blessed landlord and tenant expert. It has been a fantastic pleasure having you to join me today. I look forward to seeing you all next week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to say bye for now.